Okay, I had a little bit of trouble lining up the springs and lowering the jack at the same time. Okay, I had a little bit of trouble lining up the springs and lowering the jack at the same time, and didn't realize ran out of memory on my camera. But you really need two people for that part, because you're lowering the engine down on these springs and you have to hold them in place as it comes down and it sits on them. But I got it to where you're sitting on the springs, and then you just put the brass bushing and spring, castle nut, and cotter pin on the bottom. And I got some pictures of that you can see, but that went pretty easily. Now I'm going to move to the rear mounts to see how those go. Okay, the rear mounts, they originally had a 3 bolts here, and they had castle nuts with cotter pins on them. Well, mine were pretty rusty, and so I ordered a new set, and what they sent me was, the bolt's sort of okay, but it doesn't have the hole for the castle nut, and they did nylocks. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and put them on there. Not super happy with that. So just be careful when you're ordering that. If you want, they're going to be hidden up under, splash aprons, fenders, and everything else, so you're not really going to see them. But it's not the same as the originals. So these pads, there's two. When you order rear mounts, you get a kind of a L pad with little bumps on it, and those will stick through the holes in the frame, and they have little bushings that hold it off from squeezing it down. Oh, there we go. Get in there. And then on the outside, you have this steel plate that goes on there, and they give you another pad with little indentations to go on the outside here, so that it'll float on the frame. So you don't want to squeeze it down on the frame. But the mount, I went ahead and took mine all the way off, just because it was so rusty, and when I did the frame I didn't take them off, because when I did the frame and chassis, the engine was already sitting in there. That's why, like the front mount, I needed to clean up around the front mount too, so I really needed to take that whole front mount off when I was doing the timing gear. But these, I never took them off when I was doing the frame, so they really needed to be cleaned up. But they have these 2 bolts that mount to the bell housing, and then the 3 bolts mount through this and sit inside the frame here. And when I was taking these off, they're a little bit tough to get in and out of there. I'm not sure how tough they're going to be. The other thing that I noticed was that this little bracket has rivets on the inside, so I can't start from the front and go back. I have to go from the back and slide it forward. And kind of thinking whether I want to oil it up or not. And how much wiggle room I get here. mounts inside this rubber. That's gonna be tough. Tough. Gonna switch to time lapse because this may take a while. Okay, after fighting with it for a while, the engine was sitting a little cockeyed in the frame. So what I ended up doing is putting this heavy-duty ratchet strap on to pull this side a little bit forward to be able to get these nuts through, and bolts through, I mean, to get this rear mount on. So it just needed just a little bit, and it just wasn't moving on its own. And yeah, if I had another guy or two here, we could have shuffled on it maybe a little bit to get the bolts through, but being by myself, I put the strap on there and just pulled it a little bit tight on the bell housing back of the starter here, just enough to get the bolts through. So now we have these little bushings to put in this rubber mount, and then this goes over the bolts on this side. And these bolts are going to be very short, so I'm not sure how much of a struggle this is going to be. So they don't even stick past the rubber here. And I got this steel plate to put on. So we'll see how that goes. What I found doing the other side is I really have to get these spacer bushings into the rubber of the inner rear mount. So even though it's not the best thing to do with nylocks, I found that the thread pattern isn't a normal nut, so I can't just use the normal nut. I'll have to use the nylocks, but I'm gonna and that gives me a little more room put the this other side on. And then it's still very short for the to get the nut started. See the thread, but you can't get it started. So what I found on the other side is my brake caliper return use it on my calipers. Come on, release. But if I put this block on the inside and this block on the outside, I need like 4 hands to do this. I'm trying to not mess up the paint too much. I'm trying to just get it started enough to get this nut started on this side. And then squeeze the rubber down a little bit. Come on. So, got to tighten these inner bolts, but that's about it for the rear mounts.